So Jimmer, I'm looking at these video clips. One's of Andy Roddick, the other one's of Tim Lincecum. And Andy Roddick has hit a tennis serve 150 miles an hour. He generates and tolerates a lot of arm velocity, racket velocity on his arm, body, shoulder. Tim Lincecum can throw 100 miles an hour fastball. And the thing I'm noticing on both of these guys is they have similar positions in terms of their setup. So if we look at Andy Roddick first, basically as he goes and he tosses the ball up in the air and he loads, in volleyball terminology, this would be considered a low elbow, right? But what I see, if I could draw a straight line through his elbow and his upper arm, it would go right through the shoulders and right through his opposite upper arm. If I look at Lincecum, I see something very similar to that. As he sets up and gets ready to throw, I see the same thing. His body's tilted. I could draw a straight line through his elbow, through his upper arm, through his shoulders, to his opposite upper arm. And once again, in volleyball, this could be considered a low elbow. So, Jimmer, in volleyball, with hitters, there's a lot of discussion and instruction that talks about this high elbow setup position. And I'm curious, from a physical therapist perspective, are there concerns with that? Is the body and is the shoulder able to generate and tolerate those kind of forces? What's your thoughts?
Well, to answer your first question, yeah, they can generate forces from that high elbow position. The problem with the high elbow position is that you don't have proper congruency or stability within the scapulohumeral joints.
When you say congruency, what do you mean by that?
So congruency meaning having as large of a contact surface between ball and socket.
Okay.
So the more contact surface you have, the more stable the joint becomes. If we hit from this position, we have a nice and stable joint. Whereas if we hit from this position where you have less congruency or less contact surface, you won't be as stable and you won't have as much control over the motion, and you don't have as much stability, which could lead to potential injuries.
Okay.
So high elbow position, we're driving that humeral head down. It's no longer nicely seated in the glenoid surface, and you run into potential impingement syndrome problems, labrum tears. So as you saw in the clips that you showed us earlier, if we load and we stay in a nice horizontal plane, for one, we have a better stability point, so you have better control over rotation, so going from that medially into a laterally rotated position. Plus, it's a much more stable position to be hitting from.
All right, so Jimmer, I think what we're looking at here is, in volleyball terminology, we're trying to get the right arm over the left leg while they're in the air. And when we do that, what I'm seeing is now that the upper arm and shoulders, here's our straight line relationship. The body can actually rotate, and we're putting the shoulder in a much better position to generate and tolerate force. Is that accurate?
That's correct. Yeah. So if we add shoulder blade back to the stable position, so we're now in a position where the arm is here, where the shoulder blade is tilted. Because the shoulder blade is coming out in an abducted position, it carries, the basket carries the humeral head, creates a nice and stable position.
And we're trying then to avoid this, where the shoulders are parallel with the ground and the arms straight up there.
Here we end up with that position that we showed earlier, where since your shoulder blade cannot abduct up, it cannot conform to the humeral head, and you get that area of a lot less stability and a lot less contact between the humeral head and the scapula.
So when I hear the word impingement, what does that mean here? What happens?
Impingement, what happens here is that since the arm is going to roll up and it won't be able to glide down, you create in that subacromial space, the space between the humeral head and the acromion, this bone, there's less space, so the structures within that space will become pinched. And if you repeat that often enough, that tissue will start to break down. So that's where the term impingement comes from.
And that can start off as inflammation, a sore shoulder.
Just a sore shoulder. Yeah, okay. Just a shoulder ache, a sore shoulder, having the ice afterwards, still having some stiffness in the next morning, just remnants of that inflammatory response that you create.
And that should be kind of a warning sign to the athlete, to the coach, to the parent.
If your shoulder is sore after you hit, you're doing something wrong. If your muscles are sore, that's okay. But if your shoulder is sore, you're doing something wrong.
So, Jimmer, boil this down, keep it simple for me. What I think I'm hearing is this. In volleyball, where it's referred to a low elbow position, this position where the elbow, you could draw a line between the elbow through the shoulder, What I'm hearing is it's actually a pretty good position. Create velocity, maybe protect the shoulder a little bit. What's your thoughts?
That's correct, yes. It's a very stable position. It's a little harder to teach. It's more energy efficient than the high elbow. But the biggest thing is it's very stable. So it creates good velocity, it prevents injury, and it promotes longevity.